Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome as you start coming on in here. I'm Nick Paro, founder of Banner and Backbone, soon to be joined by my friend Tara Devlin of Terrorbuster and Political Voices Network, here for today's Anti-Fascist Book Club. As we continue our discussion and reading into Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist. So welcome everyone as you start coming on in. It's good to have you all with us. Tara will be joining us here shortly. She's on a call that she couldn't get out of. So I'm going to kick us off today. Today we are working into chapters 2 and 3 of the book of Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. We'll be covering dueling consciousness and power. And so before we get into our discussion, let me reintroduce what the Anti-Fascist Book Club is and what it's not. So over my head here in the top left-hand corner of your screen is a QR code where you can go find the Veterans Fighting Fascism Anti-Fascist Book Club guidebook on how to start your own, what resources you need, and how to be effective at getting your group off the ground and up and running, either in person or virtually, whichever is the easiest and whichever makes sense for you and those around you and your community. So what is the Anti-Fascist Book Club and what is it not? The Anti-Fascist Book Club is a place to learn. It's a starting point. It's a place where you can get introduced to what anti-fascism is, what it really means to be anti-fascist, and how you can apply those lessons in your own life. We've gone through some incredible books from On Tyranny and now up to How to Be an Anti-Racist. And there are some more incredible books along the way. And in good and lucky for all of us is after the first couple sessions of your own Anti-Fascist Book Club, either in person or virtual, you don't need the guidebook much longer. It's pretty straightforward. And all you really need to do is get involved, get engaged, and be willing to learn. Be willing to read, be willing to learn, be willing to challenge your own opinions, your own biases, and your own values. And you will find, sorry, my dogs are going off in the background. We're going to have some dog bells here for a little while as they are very excited. So just bear with me as you hear the dogs barking in the background a lot. Tara, it's good to see you this morning. Glad you were able to get off your call and jump in with us. I was just finishing up what the Anti-Fascist Book Club is and what it's not. And my dogs are going off. I'm going to mute myself and hand it over to you here for a quick second to get your initial thoughts on the chapters that we're covering today from the Anti-Fascist, from How to Be an Anti-Racist, of chapters 2 and 3, which are A Dueling Consciousness and Power. And so I'm going to mute myself.
We're doing 3 too. Okay.
We're gonna at least cover 2. We may get into 3 depending on how long and how deep we go into this conversation. As we've said before, there's a lot in this book. And there's a lot of really good topics to cover. So Tara, I'm going to hand it over to you here real quick just to give some of your opening thoughts, and I'll be right back.
All right. Hey guys, I was on the phone call with, well, we'll talk about it later tonight. I have a show tonight at 8:30. Not that I'm, distracting from the topic at hand. Well, I've been reading this book, and if you guys have been following along, I was saying that the reason it's great to belong to and join a book club, especially the Anti-Fascist Book Club, is because it will expose me, and I hope you agree, to books that I would probably not have chosen on my own, and which is more of the reason I should read it, really. But it's great to get a perspective, to live to see the world and put myself in the shoes of other people. And in chapter 2, Dueling Consciousness, Kendi argues that racism is not just open hatred. It is it also lives in a supposedly helpful demand that marginalized people change themselves to meet a dominant and usually white, of course, the power structure, to meet a white standard. And we're all trapped in that right now, especially with Trump and the maggots. According to them, whiteness is its own, it's its own reward. That's all you have to be, is born white, born male, born rich, really. And you're qualified for everything. You're qualified to be Secretary of Defense. You're qualified to be the head of the FBI or whatever, anything that you really don't have qualification for. And we see with them, especially in the military, firing people of color, firing women, minorities, and replacing them with loyalists. This is why we have to wake up to the racism in this country, and because I'm of the belief that we won't last as a free society unless we confront our racist history and have that kind of truth and reconciliation conversation that we're going to have to do it to survive as a multiracial liberal democracy. And that's what makes, I think, in my opinion, America. America is, the Republicans talk about the exceptionalism, American exceptionalism. We're the greatest country on earth. We are the only country that is a multiracial liberal democracy. We're built on not on blood, but on an idea that we are in this together. I think that's pretty remarkable now, and I think that's pretty special. And that's why, unfortunately, though, right-wingers hate the very essence of e pluribus unum, out of many one. And that's why they're trying to destroy it to talk about dueling consciousness, as Kendi writes. I understand that, because what he means is that as someone growing up in this country with darker pigment, he was always pushed to meet that white standard and to consider the culture and just blackness itself as somehow inferior. And then we see that all the time with Republicans. They get mad that people aren't assimilating. That's what they think, other people's cultures are somehow diminishing the American culture. And what is American culture but multiracial liberalism? And, when I think about the 250th anniversary, and that it sucked okay, I didn't go to the mall where they made that, that awful, what displays. That's what it was. It had like a baptism tent, and it had tents that was just boring, overheated, no air conditioning. People were fainting, but each tent represented each every state. And but what was there, if Americans who truly embrace our system, the multiracial liberalism of that actually makes America great, I think, like, what a missed opportunity. It would be, what's great about New York is that it is a multiracial city, and you can get food. You can go to communities that are you could experience different cultures right here in one city, and it's amazing. There's nothing It's not it's nothing bad. And what did they do with the 250th anniversary? What did they have for food? Like nothing. I mean, it was just like this bland bullshit. Like, what is America to these people? You know what I mean? Like, it could have been an explosion, like amazing tapestry of diversity. That is threatening to them. So anyway, I know I'm
It
going
is.
off track here,
No, I
but
think it's all right. I think it's a
yeah,
great way to start
yeah.
because I posted a quote from the very end of this chapter earlier today. Um, and it sort of embodies the opposite of what happened for the 250th. So let me read from the very end of chapter 2 on page 40, I believe it is. Yeah, on page 40 of the paperback copy, How to Be an Anti-Fascist or Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. If you don't have your own copy, please go pick up your own copy, either from a local library or from the publisher directly, so that you don't have to go through a third-party retailer like Amazon or Walmart or Barnes & Noble or something like that. Go directly through the publisher. It's better for the authors that way, and middle folks don't get a cut in it. But what he states at the very end of chapter 2, which is Dueling Consciousness, is, but there is a way to get free. To be anti-racist is to emancipate oneself from the dueling consciousness. To be anti-racist is to conquer the assimilationist consciousness and the segregationist consciousness. The white body no longer presents itself as the American body. The black body no longer strives to be the American body, knowing there is no such thing as the American body, only American bodies, racialized by power. And I think that sort of really sums up what you were discussing there. Is the 250th was so lackluster and
Yeah, it was so
so
blasé.
boring and
Yes.
unseasoned
So
and
bland, so without
bland
heart.
because it didn't challenge
Right.
the ideas of segregationism
That's
and
right.
anti-racism and abolitionism, and it just bought into the idea that there's only one American body and that
Yeah.
American body looks white, which it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
and it shouldn't. It should never have been what we envision the American body as, but
Right.
it has been. And it's on us to challenge that idea and that status quo and these ideas that there is an ideal American body and it is represented by whiteness. Like
Right.
that's a false assumption.
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
what has led to some of the most damaging and destructive policies and decisions and views that have come out of America over the generations, over our 250 years, is we bought into these racist policies and turned them to hurt ourselves, to hurt each other, to hurt folks in our own communities, or for Black history in America, to turn Black people against their own people, to see other Black people as lesser than
Mm-hmm.
themselves, and to escape from, quote, poor Black America, to become whiter, to become assimilated into whiteness.
That's
And
right. Right.
we can
Right.
see the effects of people rejecting that nowadays. We can see the effects of more and more people coming to view their own historical traditions
Mm-hmm.
and their ethnicity and their uniqueness in a way that it's celebratory and isn't about assimilating into a European style, or specifically white European style of whiteness, but into a true plurality and mixture of cultures that don't just degrade and don't force people
Mm-hmm.
in these
Yeah.
boxes. Uh,
Right.
and so maybe it's important too that we read the definitions that Ibram puts at the beginning of chapter 2. I like these little definition blocks because they highlight some really
Right.
pieces for the remainder of the chapter. So before we get too far into any discussion, from the very beginning of Dueling Consciousness on page 30, the first three areas are assimilationist idea, segregationist idea, and anti-racist idea. So an assimilationist idea is any notion that suggests that a racial group is culturally or behaviorally inferior, which justifies support for cultural or behavioral enrichment programs to develop that racial group. Segregationist idea is any notion that suggests that a permanently inferior racial group can never be developed, which justifies policies and practices that kill, terrorize, deport, incarcerate, or separate away that racial group. And an anti-racist idea. Those are any notion that suggests that racial groups are equals and none needs developing, which justifies policies focused on creating racial equity and justice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that we talk specifically around the segregationist ideas that are going on because we're in a time of resegregationist
Yep.
ideas,
Yep. Yep.
and the influx of resegregationist policy
Yep.
to separate the races or separate the masses into racial subgroups so that one can see themselves as above everybody else.
Right.
And
Yeah, and it doesn't
yeah,
matter too. This is the trap as well. If we look at what happened and what is happening to the immigrants, the Somali immigrants in Springfield, they did come into. They were invited into the community. They created businesses. They established their homes and families there. They revitalized the community, and still they were targeted, and they will never, to maggots, to the maggot eye, they will never be American at all because of their dark skin. That's it. That's their original sin, so to speak. And it is, poor. It's a statement on the right wing, of course, but this is exactly why we have we have to give voice to what Kendi is talking about. It is 100%. Segregation might sound, or assimilation might sound more, better than segregation, but inherent in there is the idea that it's whiteness is, the pinnacle of,
that there's a superiority
yeah,
in
that you
whiteness.
exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, because and that is a powerful thing that we have to break past. Like, it is assimilation is not the right way to go about it.
Hmm.
We don't need to assimilate into a single unified culture either. We don't have a single unified set of traditions. We have a plurality of traditions and histories, and each unique tradition and idea should be taken with weight and should be
Yeah.
understood, and we should be able to flourish from those. And that includes those who are from European nations who see themselves as white and who define themselves as white, to challenge their own thoughts and understand where their traditions come from and where their uniqueness and individualism comes from, and their value, and the beauty that is in their cultures too. Because European nations have beautiful cultures in their own ways. There is a lot of amazing history
Oh, yeah,
in the
of course.
European nations. And there's a lot of amazing history that is pre-Christianity and pre-Catholicism in Europe that has been forgotten or has been trampled on, and has
Yeah.
created these singular ideas of whiteness and taken away from and have assimilated their culture into a monoculture that is bland and boring and takes away the beauty of what was,
Right.
what still is there. And so we have to challenge ourselves to get
Yeah.
away from that mindset and allow ourselves to be liberated from that mindset so that we can see each other for who we are, for the uniquenesses that we all have,
That's
and
right.
how those uniquenesses can come together without assimilating into each other.
And see, this is the thing too. It's also about understanding and valuing what we are as a nation, as a multiracial liberal democracy, and embracing that as the beauty of America. That's the American culture that we should be proud of. I don't know about you, I am, because that's why when maggot types, when the racist types get a hold of American so-called culture, that's why they diminish it. That's why it's so boring and bland, because it's really not the soul of America. It's just it's a facade of bullshit, and it's fake and it's phony. And we all know what the real American culture should be. It should be our diversity. It should be our ideals, our civic ideals of liberty, equality, right? Of leaving no one behind. That should be the American culture, shared institutions, and it's not,
Yeah,
and our diversity, I think.
and to go past what the founders of our nation started to
Hmm.
create that free and equal society and equitable society, because they failed in the statements of
Yes.
all men are created equal,
Yeah.
all people are
Right.
created equal.
Right. Right.
And
Yep.
if you're a believer in Christian theology or Catholicism in any way, is all people are created in the image of God. And that in itself would mean
Yep.
that all people are created equally in the image of God. And we should not take that to hurt others and to oppress. And
Yes.
we should expand on those. If we want to be a Christian nation, if that's what people truly believe, that we are a Christian nation, then show it. Then live
Yeah.
up to the
Wow.
ideals that all children are made in the image of God, that all people
Yeah.
are made in the image of God without distinction in that way. And the whole history of race itself and the terms of race are based in racist ideas and racist policies. And we have to challenge them from
Right.
Portugal in 1444 on. And we have created these notions of race. And it was
Yeah.
all in a hierarchy to put who they saw as white folks on
Yeah.
top
That's right.
and to differentiate. And I think Ibram makes a really important point right at the beginning of, also at the beginning of chapter 2 on page 34, is going back to seeing policy. And this is where we need to expand our views of seeing policy rather than just people, is because seeing people is too narrow-minded. We have to see the policy that creates the environment for racist ideas and racism to flourish.
Hmm.
Is that Americans have long been trained to see the deficiencies of people rather than policy. It's a pretty easy mistake to make. People are in our faces, policies are distant. We are particularly poor at seeing the policies lurking behind the struggles of people. And so from Ibram. And so my parents turned away from the problems of policies to look at the problems of people and reverted to striving to save and civilize Black people rather than liberate them.
Wow.
Civilizer theology became more attractive to my parents in the face of the rise of the crack and the damage it did to Black people, as it did to so many children of civil rights and Black power. But in many ways, liberation theology remained their philosophical home, the home in which they raised me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to get back to either, for those who are religious, go back to liberation theology. For those of us who are non-religious, go to liberation ideas and liberation policy and challenge ourselves to see the policy rather than the people, because we focus too much on the individual and we focus
Well, yeah, and that's part of the scam too. It's about you'll hear from Republicans and the right how it's personal responsibility, because that absolves them of having to recognize the broken system and how the system helps prop up the rich, the already rich and powerful, and leave people behind. And then they'll use a story like I don't know, name an athlete, or they'll use a Black athlete. How they'll say, "Oh, well, look at Michael Jordan. He's a billionaire." So, as if, see, all you got to do is work hard, and you could be a billionaire too, and not understand that itself. Like, recognize, it just absolves the system, the broken system of any responsibility that we have to each other, and keeps that system going. So. Yeah, and it's a scam.
Yeah, and using that, I guess it's the token
Yes.
friend,
That's
or
yeah,
claiming that you are not that you are not racist because you have a token Black friend, or a token Jewish friend, or a token Latina friend, or Latinx friend, or Native American friend, or Middle Eastern, or Southwest Asian friend, or anybody. Like, using the tokenized token, you're reducing the created strife and the created policy to weaponize an individual against their own community, or to further your comfort level.
Yes.
Like, it's all about making yourself feel comfortable without challenging the ideals or the ideas around you and the policy that makes you think that you even need to tokenize somebody in that way. And building off what we had already been talking about, but going further back into this assimilationist discussion, is from what Ibram writes on page 36. Assimilationist ideas are racist ideas. Assimilationist ideas position any racial group as the superior standard that another racial group should be measuring themselves against, the benchmark they should be trying to reach. Assimilationist ideas typically position white people as the superior standard.
Yeah.
And it's the assimilationist ideas came from the ideas that, at least at the time, were originally promoted from the Portuguese in the mid 1400s around the superiority, and that in all of the early writings, that the only way to make people from Africa better was to turn them into white European clones, or to civilize them, or to give them the gift of Christianity, or to bring about these, what we call, civilization. And because we saw them as lesser, We saw it
Mm-hmm.
and those ideas have continued throughout history. Those are the ideas that continued to inform the slave trade as it flourished from what the Portuguese started in the mid 1400s, bypassing the other human trade that was going on from Africa, where it was not specifically about what race of people was being sold into slavery. That was more multicultural slavery.
Yeah.
The Portuguese skipped that and started doing Black specific slavery
Yes.
and putting themselves on a pedestal above every other racial group as they define them. And we do have to see our own racial groups. We have to be willing to acknowledge them and talk about them and accept the fact that I am white. I am part of the white racial group. I have a set of privileges in America and a set of standards that are set upon me because I am white.
Mm-hmm.
There are different privileges and standards set upon people in America because they are Black or they are Hispanic or they are from the Middle East region. And yes, naming it the Middle East is in itself a terminology to make those groups lesser than and to separate them out as lesser than, and or as we talk about the global South. Those are racist terminologies and they fit into the assimilationist ideas because the idea is that you are lesser than unless you are assimilated into a white culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. And I mean, this was policy in the United States against the Native Americans, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
So only up until a point too, and then where I think thinking about the enslaved population, where they were prevented from getting an education and whatnot, of course, because that's one of the things that they prevented so they could control and keep people in their place. And so, that's the other thing that this country doesn't really needs to reconcile with the actual history of this country, and that's why um, we really do need that truth and reconciliation. I believe, and I mean, it's like you would do with any relationship. If you're in a relationship and you wanted to continue, you listen to your partner's pain and you respect it and you do what you can to, honor that and come together and recognize it. You don't say, like when during Black Lives Matter movement, you don't say, if somebody says Black Lives Matter, you don't say all lives matter. That's so fucking dismissive and condescending. Of course, yes, if only all lives matter, because if all lives matter, we wouldn't have to say Black Lives Matter, really. If only. That's what's so irritating
Yeah.
about about them, about the right wing. They stand in the way of progress, not just progress, but unity. They stand in the way of a more perfect union all the time.
And and I think right now, yes, we're dealing with a multitude of issues. We are dealing with we are and will continue to be dealing with assimilationist ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We have for the entirety of our nation.
Yeah.
And I think the more prevalent one at the moment, though, and this is definitely an and, not a but,
Mm-hmm.
the more prevalent of the two are the segregationist ideas at the
Mm-hmm.
moment.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And we're regressing back to systems of segregation.
Yes,
And
deliberately.
deliberately, and we see it all over the place.
Right.
And from Ibram writes about it, um, and this is just a short section from page 39, with segregationist ideas positioning the incapability of a racial group to be civilized and developed. Segregationist policies are geared towards segregating, enslaving, incarcerating, deporting, and killing, with anti-racist ideas positioning that the racial groups are already civilized. Anti-racist policies are geared toward reducing racial inequalities and creating equal opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're seeing a lot of the separationist or the segregationist
Oh
policies
yeah.
right now
Yeah.
in ICE, who I think the many like to compare them, and myself included, I compare them a lot to the Gestapo and the Nazis. But it goes deeper than that. And it goes deeper than that because the Gestapo and the Nazis used segregationist policy and segregationist ideas to segregate out the Jewish population, the Gypsy population. And I know Gypsy is not the correct term, the Roma population, sorry, the disabled population, the the Jehovah's Witnesses, any population that was not their idea or their ideal of white, blonde haired, blue eyed superiority. And these segregationist policies are returning in many ways to the States through what had been there even before Nazism, were slave catchers, and how we founded our police system in the US. And even more so, like our friend Naida Green in the chat talks about a little bit here, is the 13th. For me, the 13th Amendment is a big one. That is a segregationist idea. That amendment in our Constitution is one that needs to be fixed. It's from Reconstruction, and it needs to be fixed because it didn't do what it could have done or should have done, which was truly end slavery. Yeah, police systems in the South specifically aimed at catching and punishing Black people and runaway slaves. People who were seeking their freedom, because no person inherently wants to be a slave. No person desires that level of servitude. And the lie that goes into making people believe that that is a policy worth keeping, it's not. The 13th Amendment created our prison system. It created a new nexus of slavery in the United States. We just felt better about it because we didn't make it implicitly about race on the front end. It wasn't implicit that it was just about Black people going to prison. But that's how it's been used in throughout history in the US, is that it has been used to oppress. It has been used and it's been owned, the prison system specifically, by those who used to be slavers. And it is the same tool, just in a slightly different way. So it has made Americans feel better because we were able to make the policy further from ourselves and saying, see, we no longer own people, so they're not slaves anymore. But they are. But they are. That's what the prison labor system has created. That's what the prison industrial complex created. That's why we have ICE running around, modern day slave catchers running around trying to create segregation within our nation and scare minority groups, scare racial groups that are not white, or to scare white individuals who would be considered race traitors, because we see everyone else as inherently equal and having value. And we don't see a superiority complex in ourselves because we have challenged those ideas, and we continue to challenge them, and we continue to not accept them as reality.
I agree.
What are your thoughts there?
I don't know. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. There's a lot. Yeah. I just think that, what was I going to say? No, I don't know. I was getting distracted from someone was posting something. So I'm sorry about that. But like I said, we need to start from a premise that racial groups are equal, but we've already nailed this down. and look at the power and the policy, not the people, not the individual, because we're all in this system and we're all affected by it. And I know from personal experience too. It's as a gay person, we hear this all the time from the right. How, like for example, I don't care if you're gay, just don't rub it in my face or whatnot. It's the same mentality that Ibram is talking about. So yeah, about how they just don't want to challenge themselves. About it's an uncomfortability that they don't want to look at, and it really does hold us down. It's like an albatross around our necks, because yeah, human beings, I believe, are is a it's the difference is between the it's like Dorothy and Oz, or in Kansas. Right? Who wants to live in Kansas? We want the beautiful diversity, the color, the technicolor of Oz, right? Yeah. Anyway, that's how I look at it. So
Yeah. And I think it's important too that we talk about specifically on the dueling, since we're focusing heavily in the second
mhm,
chapter, is the dueling consciousness itself. Is dueling consciousness goes for all, at least in America, goes
mhm,
for both white people and those who are non-white.
mhm,
And the I want to read again from Ibram on page 39 about the dueling consciousness, specifically focused for the dueling white consciousness, which is the
right,
dueling white consciousness has, from its position of relative power, shaped the struggle within black consciousness. Despite the cold truth that America was founded, quote, by white men for white men, end quote, as segregationist Jefferson Davis said on the floor of the U.S.
mhm,
Senate in 1860, Black people have often expressed a desire to be American and have been encouraged in this by America's undeniable history of anti-racist progress away from chattel slavery and Jim Crow. Despite the cold instructions from the likes of Nobel laureate Gunnar Myrdal to, quote, become assimilated into American culture, end quote, Black people have also, as W.E. Du Bois said, desired to remain Negro, discouraged by America's undeniable history of racist progress, from advancing police violence and voter suppression to widening racial inequalities in areas ranging from health to wealth.
mhm,
And I think those last two in there are really important, especially right now, is health and wealth. Um, and we have to talk about as my friend Doc Eric Lulov and I have started calling, is gene pool management,
mhm,
because you use the word eugenics, and the social media platforms like to suppress that, which, I mean, it is the right word, but to get around that bullshit is
mhm,
the US has a history of gene pool management, and
right,
we advance that through health policy, through redlining
mhm,
and purposeful segregationist policy to force upon certain racial groups a perception of lack of wealth or a lack of culture, which is the assimilationist culture of middle class white America, because that's what we've all been taught, is to strive for the ideal, is the middle class white America.
yeah,
It's the ideal. That's where you'll be happiest. But our
and that's where
policy,
they'll be happiest. That's
that's
what
where they'll be
it
happiest. And not just where you'll be happiest, but that's where they'll be happiest. That's where Black
mm,
people who reject
yeah,
their Blackness to become white
right,
will be happiest, which is what I read at the beginning, is to reject this single idea of an American body, but instead embrace the idea of American bodies
right,
racialized in power. And that's what we need to accept, is that there are unique individual American bodies that are not just a single standard that we have set through racist policy
hmm,
and racist ideas. And we have to talk about the eugenics in this, case because right now we're undergoing a lot of health policy that
Oh
is
God, yeah.
Anti-life. The pro-lifers are
Oh yeah.
anti-lifers because they accept these racist policies of eugenics and or gene pool management where they are implementing health policies intended to harm communities they see lesser than.
Mm.
And yes, it'll harm poor white communities too, and it'll harm white people too, but that's not they don't care because it harms and it will disproportionately harm other minority communities that have been forced into those situations through
Mm.
historical policy and precedent of our assimilationist and segregationist ideas in this
Mm.
country. And like I said, much of that is due in recent times due to redlining, due to the attacks on abortion, and claiming that black people get abortions more than white people, and
Mm.
that abortion is intended to create to is somehow a race-based thing. It's a healthcare choice.
Mm.
Abortion is healthcare, like is women's healthcare. I have nothing else to say on that. Like,
Yeah.
not my body, not my choice, and it is healthcare.
Well, if they actually wanted to limit abortions, they would support universal health care, higher
Or contraceptive
education. Yes,
practices, and
reality-based education. Yeah, and all of the economic factors that force women and families to choose an abortion over carrying a pregnancy to term. There's reams of studies over around this that criminalizing abortion does not reduce the abortion rate, and then um, of course, the white supremacists themselves claim that their anti-abortion stance is rooted in their love of black women. It's a black genocide, they'll say things like that, and but they'll completely ignore like what we're talking about, the factors that force people to, especially people of color who are traditionally because of the power structure, face economic hardships and their
purposely
yeah,
instilled
purpose.
economic hardships.
Exactly. So and the education system, and this is what it drives me crazy about the racist. Racism is built right into the system, especially in the education system that is funded through property taxes. That is a deliberate racist policy that I mean, I wish Democrats would openly call it out, because if when they talk about good schools and bad schools, it always drives me up a wall, because that is the racist policy. If
Hmm.
you're in a rich area, then you have a good school. But if you wanted an education system that was equal and where every child got educated in a good school, schools would be funded through the general fund, not through property taxes. So they
And
created.
I have no problem with us using property tax to supplement our education systems
Mm, yeah,
and to
which probably makes
add
more
to,
sense. Yeah, exactly.
but it
Hmm.
shouldn't be the driver
Right.
in the funding.
Exactly.
And it shouldn't be the sole driver of our funding because, yeah, redlining was created so that they could create inner city or
Yep, that's
lower
it.
income
Ghetto.
schools
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
quote ghettos
Yeah.
for Black
Ghettoize people.
Americans.
Yeah. Segregate
And
people.
the
Well,
war on drugs was used to target Black people more
that's
so
right.
in disproportionate numbers than any other group.
Right.
And statistically speaking, white people do drugs at the same rate as Black people do.
Well,
White
yeah.
people sell drugs at the same rate as other groups do, as other racial groups do. However, the groups that were targeted in these policies were race based. Were always geared towards Black families,
Hmm.
towards lower income families who were purposely put into these areas. It's why we see, and it's also why we see ideas such as the Black Panther Party as being a gang, quote unquote, or not a political group in the same way that we would see other political activist groups who are white.
Mm-hmm.
However, the history of the Black Panther Party includes some of the most amazing community-driven efforts to uplift their communities and to bring about liberation theology and liberation ideals. And yes, there was violence.
Yes.
Because violence was being perpetrated against them, and there was no other response that could be heard or seen or listened to.
That's right.
And violence begets violence, but it's not upon the oppressed to prevent the violence. It is upon the oppressor to realize and be shown that what they're doing, if they are unintentionally doing it, but more often than not intentionally, they need to be broken out of the segregationist and mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the dueling consciousness that we need to face. We need to stop allowing ourselves to see segregation or assimilation as the only paths forward. Because those are backwards facing paths.
Yeah.
Those bring us back to a time when people are swept off the streets for being brown or black or non-white. That's what we're moving back to. That's why we see ICE being outfitted with $20 million in shock gloves from Compliant Technologies. The company is aptly named as Compliant Technologies because they want compliance. They don't want freedom or to serve and protect. They want you compliant.
Right.
And it's scare tactics. It's intended to create fear, to create the appearance of modern Jim Crow.
Yeah.
And it's why the Save America Act is so lethal.
Yeah.
And so dangerous, is because it targets specific groups because they are lesser than in their eyes. Because,
Save America. Yeah.
Save America from what? From
Well, they always do that. That's the Republican way. Clean Sky Initiative allows more pollution into the air. This is what they've done for years, forever. They know branding because they have nothing else. Their policies are so anti-life and so detrimental to the American experience and the American people that they do know how to sell it. But yeah, we see what's happening with the what they're doing with black districts. Now they're like, because of this Supreme Court decision, they're gerrymandering black districts out of existence. So black people, they're basically diluting black voting and black power in these Republican-led states. That it's infuriating, frankly, because we are taking steps backwards now. It feels like, well, and I've said it for years, that we've never actually completed the work of Reconstruction, and it's even worse now. This is something we have to do. We'd be living in a much different country if they never pulled the troops out of the South. And the compromise of 18, the year escapes me, where they that was the compromise: pull the troops out of the South, and they got a Republican president, because the Republicans were the abolitionists at the time, and which effectively ended Reconstruction and
1876. Thank you,
1876. Thank you. And it basically unleashed terrorism against the population for the next 100 years, and still we're here. So, yeah.
A good step would be to actually treat white terrorist groups as
hmm
terrorist
Oh,
groups,
yeah. Well, look at
as
January 6th.
oppressors.
I mean, God, where we are definitely moving backwards. And this is why there can't be this democratic notion, small d democratic and democratic party notion of moving forward, not behind. All of that bullshit from when Ford pardoned Nixon that brought us to today. And there has to be accountability.
Yeah, healing and the ability to truly move forward can only be accomplished if we actually admit the flaws and
Right.
the faults that we have done so that we can reconcile them, so that we can make them better, so that we can change policy, so that we can fix the amendments to our Constitution, which didn't do enough
Mm.
or were compromises with slavers to get them back in the Union.
And to
The
recognize.
Union isn't going to fall apart unless we allow it. And we
Mhm.
don't have to allow it to fall apart. We
Mhm.
can make a better and more perfect Union without it breaking apart.
Right. And you know what? I remember, I'm just thinking now about, I remember AOC back when I think she was a new representative, said something. She was getting interviewed a lot on television, of course, about her being a democratic socialist. And they would ask her questions, and then they would act so shocked about the answers, like, the 90% top marginal tax rate and all that. But another thing they asked her about, because she had said that the GI Bill had racist elements in it, the 1944 GI Bill. And she was right. And I remember all over Morning Joe, which I used to watch more regularly, and just to start my day with a knot in my stomach, they were going off about how AOC called the GI Bill racist, and like what an idiot. Okay. And they, as if she wasn't telling the truth. The fact is, white colleges, my father and my uncles were able to buy a home with their GI Bill benefits, and that built generational wealth. And that's most working class people build generational wealth by buying a home. And now a lot of people can't buy homes. That is another problem, of course, that is really by design. But white colleges shut out black applicants, black veterans. The VI bill, veterans were restricted from buying homes, and the statistics are shocking. And it's written right here. Like, for example, I'm just looking it up. In 1947, across 13 Mississippi cities, two of the 3,229 VA home loans went to black veterans. In New York, fewer than 100 out of 67,000 GI Bill insured mortgages went to non-white voters. I mean, borrowers. And so that tells the story right there. When you can't build intergenerational wealth, you're not on equal footing. That's for sure. So these black veterans who came home, and my father talked about it too, because when he was in the service, and he remembers taking a bus and down into the South, and when they crossed the Mason-Dixon line, he remembers saying that all the black soldiers had to get up and go to the back of the bus. I mean, isn't that disgusting? So, yeah, this is the real history of the American experience, and it created an intergenerational wealth gap. Of course, white veterans were disproportionately um, converted to college degrees. They were, all of these things were accessible to them: suburban homes, home equity, better schools, family wealth being built when Black veterans who had fought in the same war were denied, of course, equal access to these ladders. That so when you say when you refuse to recognize that, it's infuriating to me. But yeah, it just has to be not just infuriating to me, but I think
To
it has to be
everyone.
rectified, yeah, to everyone.
Yeah.
And we start by recognizing it. You don't just say, "Well, AOC thinks the GI Bill was racist." Why would you say that and then not even explain it? Because you can't explain it because it's not true.
Yeah.
Yes, it was racist. We have the statistics. We know the practices. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And it's incumbent upon us to challenge these
mhm.
viewpoints, to challenge our own viewpoints, to call them out, to openly discuss this, because you cannot just be not racist.
Yeah.
Not being racist is you tacitly accepting racism
Mhm.
because you're unwilling to confront it. It's why we cannot be colorblind. We have to open ourselves to see the injustices that are created due to racial hierarchies, due
Mm.
to self-imposed and policy-driven racial hierarchies. We cannot just go around the world
Right.
saying, I don't see color,
Uh-huh.
or racism is solved, or
Oh God. Which is
it,
what they
the,
say. I
which
mean,
is what they say, which is what the Supreme Court has said, was
yes.
basically that racism is solved and that
That's
we
what
don't need affirmative action
Yep.
because racism is solved.
It's
That's some bullshit.
unbelievable. Yeah, and then they
That's some
use
bullshit
it's like
because if it was, we
mhm.
wouldn't have the policies that we do currently in our systems that oppress people and make people believe that they are lesser than.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we're just at the top of the hour. We're
Right.
actually just
Yes, I
at the
gotta
top of the hour. Tara's got to head off and
yeah.
jump to something else. Tara, promote
Thank you.
yourself where people can
Yeah.
find you.
Come and hang out with us tonight. We have a show 8:30 p.m. Please subscribe to my Substack. There's the QR code there. And yeah, keep the liberal media going and growing. I can't do it without you. So please, I need your support. That's it. We're in this together. Thank you.
Thanks, Tara.
Thank you.
And if you can, then come join me at Sick of This Shit Publications, where we talk a lot about chronic illness, disability rights and advocacy, and creating better humaning and growing ourselves, learning how to accept responsibility and accountability for our actions and values, and how we can grow from them and how we can learn. Because now you know, so you can grow. If you don't know, and if you're
Mm,
unwilling to learn, you're never going to grow. And so come join Sick of This Shit Publications to help you learn and grow, to help me learn and continue growing, because that's what I want to do. I want to get better. I want to be better. I want to learn how to continue to be anti-racist
mm,
and to continue to confront my own privileges, my own positions, my own ideas, and to heal and to become someone that I want to be, and that I want others to be, that I want my kids to see, that I want to pass on to the next generation. And that's where we're doing it at Sick of the Shit Publications. And then finally, come support Banner and Backbone. That's where we're putting on this show. We're doing this every week, every Friday, except for a couple here and there where we miss because we've been too busy throughout the week. But come here and support Banner and Backbone, our civically minded and action focused network, to try and help teach you and give you new ideas, expose you to new readings, to provide you different viewpoints, and to challenge ourselves along the way. So thank you, everyone, for being here with us. Thank you for being part of this group that is anti-fascism, that
mhm.
is anti-segregationism, that is anti the hate, that is ready to accept that we have work to do and we have policies that must be changed and we have a better life and a better future that and a better now that we can make for ourselves if we just choose to grasp that power. And today has concluded our second chapter of How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. We will be back next week for another discussion into at least chapter 3, maybe into chapter 4 as well, which is starts in power. and then would shift into biology. So we're going to have a great discussion next week. Go have a good weekend, everyone. Go do something anti-fascist, which means go build community. Go meet your neighbor. Go talk to somebody. Go get engaged. Go discuss these concepts openly. Think about them. Accept them. Be willing to grasp differences from your own life and where you can learn and where you can grow. Thanks, y'all. Go have a great weekend. Tara,
Yeah.
thanks. See you
See you
next week.
soon. See ya.